Welcome to the Skull King Football Podcast, presented by Fox DFS Firelines. Now, here are your hosts, Justin and Ryan Skullrood.
Hey, Skull King Nation. Welcome back to another Skull King Fantasy Football Podcast. My name is Ryan Skullrood, and I am your host today. And today we want to play a special interview that I did as part of our Inside Analysis series. We talk, in this episode, I talk with Paul Keels, the voice of the Ohio State Buckeyes, to talk about a couple of very special players. First off, we get into a little bit of Curtis Samuel, who played mainly running back for the Buckeyes, and who many believe is going to be converted into a wide receiver at the pro level. And we also get a little bit into Noah Brown, who had kind of an up and down season. There was a lot of fanfare about him due to his size, and then ended up missing an entire year, and then just wasn't really all that utilized this last year. So Paul and I have an interesting conversation. I hope you guys enjoy it. Again, this is my conversation with Paul Keels, the voice of Ohio State Buckeyes football. Hey, Skull King Nation, we are back with another Inside Analysis interview, and today I'm really excited to bring on this next guest. We are talking with the voice of the Ohio State Buckeyes, Mr. Paul Keels. Paul, thanks for joining our show today.
My pleasure. Glad to do it, Ryan.
All right. Well, we've got a couple of guys that we want to talk about. I know that there's Ohio State has such a huge program and such a prestigious program. But, being a fantasy football website, we wanted to get into a couple of the wide receivers. So why don't we go ahead and start? And if you could give us just a little bit of a background maybe of this season and maybe a little bit of the career of Curtis Samuel for us.
Well, Curtis Samuel was a guy that really had to kind of wait his turn until last year because there's been so much talent with the running back position when you consider guys like Carlos Hyde and Ezekiel Elliott and what they were able to do, and some of the other key components, not only at quarterback but at receiver. He was really overshadowed until this year. So it was really kind of a breakout year, both in his ability to run the football and his ability to catch the football, and really became kind of a key player when Ohio State at times had difficulty with the downfield pass. So he really proved to be an all-purpose back, just being able to carry the load and do everything that was asked of him by the coaching staff.
Yeah, he had an amazing year, not only running the ball but also receiving the ball. I know that in a lot of circles, it looks like he's probably going to be coming out as a wide receiver just with his size. 5'11", 196 pounds. He reminds me a lot on his tape just with his ability to not only run the ball but also his ability to catch the ball with that 4.3 40 speed. He reminds me a lot of a Percy Harvin type, I guess you could say.
Well, I think he's probably one of those guys that when you watch from the press box at a distance that we do, it's probably a little bit of deceptive speed. Think back to the game against Michigan where he scored the game-winning play in overtime where he swept around the left end and just really was able to separate and get away. And he's one of those guys that, outside of a stopwatch, maybe on the hoop when you watch him, you wouldn't think of him as a burner, but he seems to just have an ability to find the right zone, to find the right lane and be able to get away when he has to.
Yeah, in terms of his running, he seemed to be pretty patient in terms of finding his holes. And then when he found, when that hole came, he has this explosiveness to be able to get through there and not only, avoid contact from say some big, from like the linemen and the linebackers, but then once he got past them, the DBs couldn't catch up. So yeah, again, that deceptive speed.
Yeah, and very decisive. Not a lot of east and west, very much north and south. But the other thing that maybe needs to be pointed out about what Curtis did this year, too, was his pass protection and his blocking. And that was really a standard that was set by Ezekiel Elliott. And Urban Meyer and his coaching staff on the offensive side had really emphasized that whoever was going to get the opportunity to run the ball and play either at tailback or at H-back, they were going to have to really assert themselves with their pass protection skills. And I know they were very thrilled with how Curtis Samuel had developed in that regard.
Yeah, I think it's interesting just with that with how well he played at running back. There are other guys, say like a Christian McCaffrey, who's about the same size that everyone's talking about how him being a running back, but it seems like, on anywhere I see him on like NFL.com or CBS, everyone seems to be pretty much set that Curtis is going to be a wide receiver. Maybe talk a little bit about his receiving skills and his route running a little bit.
Well, one of the things I think that really helped him as far as a ball carrier was his ability to run. And when he got in the backfield or when he moved in motion, he certainly drew a great deal of attention from defenses that they had to be aware of what he could do. And, Ohio State, like a lot of other places, had their fair share of fly sweeps and things like that. So he's just a guy that, and I think a lot of it also helped too because of the ability of J.T. Barrett, both to run and throw the football. And Curtis was able to take advantage of just how defenses had to stay honest against Ohio State.
Yeah, can you maybe give us a little bit of a background on like kind of a lot of the main routes that he runs? I know that a lot of what is shown on his highlight film that you can find on YouTube is a lot of like the deep routes that he can catch. Maybe give us a little bit about his hands and that sort of thing.
Well, I think his hands have been great, and I don't, off the top of my head, Ryan, I don't really recall a whole lot of deep routes. That was something that was more preserved for some of the other people at Ohio State and had in their receiving group. But he's a guy whose hands certainly showed well. When he got his hands on the football, more often than not, he made good things happen. I don't recall any issues with having trouble hanging on to the football. Just became very, very dependable. And again, the biggest thing you can say is when his opportunity was presented to himself in his final year at Ohio State after waiting behind so many other talented players, he really took advantage of it.
Yeah, he's an absolutely electric player. Again, with being in Seattle, I was able to watch a couple of Ohio State games just because of the national program that it is. But sometimes it's a little difficult to find to be able to break down a little more tape just because of so much on YouTube is highlight film instead of being able to break down the nitty gritty. I really like Curtis Samuel's game. Again, the speed. I compare him a little bit to a Christian McCaffrey type in terms of what I was able to see here, over on the West Coast with the Pac-12. Just that insane speed, the shiftiness, the ability to move and then just take off. I think is really I could see him really excelling in the screen game. I could see him excelling as a kick or punt returner. I don't know how much he actually did that at Ohio State, though.
Early in his career, he did some kick and punt returning, but, quite honestly, a lot of times Ohio State didn't get opportunities for returns. So, as a screen receiver, certainly could see that. I'm not certain about who to compare him to. He's just a guy that, again, the best thing you can say is when his opportunity finally occurred, he really took advantage of it. It was a big part of why Ohio State was able to have the success that they had last year, and not really a surprise to anybody that he decided to forego his final year and go pro.
Okay. Yeah, I understand that Ohio State not letting a whole lot of people score to get the chance to return. So with that insane defense that Ohio State has built up. All right, well, let's go ahead and move on to our next guy. Noah Brown, 6'2", 222 pounds. Not a whole lot of experience because of missing the 2015 season. Maybe give us a little bit of a background on Noah.
Well, the injury you referred to was a broken leg that he suffered right before that season started. And he was a player they were really leaning heavily on. He had been very much a reserve, a role player in the national championship season, but they thought he was going to be a go-to guy 2 years ago, and were really devastated when he suffered that broken leg. Noah Brown was a guy who had a season and really had a career in one game this past year, and that was the game against Oklahoma, where he caught 4 touchdown passes. He just abused Oklahoma's defensive backs. And it kind of stopped after that. He really, whether it was a combination of some of the things that opposing defenses were doing or Ohio State's lack of efficiency overall on offense at times, we didn't see that kind of Noah Brown through the course of the rest of the season. But what we saw in that one game in Norman was phenomenal. He's a big physical receiver, seemingly showed very good hands, and a guy that really a lot more was expected of him, especially given what happened in that Week 3 game. But he's a guy that certainly seems to have the build to very potentially show well at the professional level.
Yeah, like you said, he not necessarily disappeared, but he just didn't seem to have that type of game that he did in that Oklahoma game. 5 catches, 4 of them for touchdowns. I think that shows his ability to be a big red zone target. He has that big body. He uses it. He uses it in the zones. From what I've been able to see on some of his tape, he has the long arms. Uses those to be able to catch the ball out in front of him. I think that his focus a bit, I think, is something to talk about. In one of those 4 touchdowns against Oklahoma, with the one where he caught the ball against. He's got his arms, basically hugging the defender and catches the ball against the back of the defender. I think that shows not only his hands, but his ability to be able to focus to catch the ball.
Without question, and that, again, that was a season and a career in one game for Noah Brown, and certainly because of that game, there was a lot of attention from professional football people on both sides of the field, and I'm not certain if I remember right, that also might have been a situation where Oklahoma had developed some injuries in their secondary, and Noah Brown on the one touchdown pass that you're referring to kind of found himself matched up against what might have been a backup cornerback at the time, but he was a guy that from those that are at practice and saw what he did on a regular basis in practice, ranted and raved about his ability, and I think maybe the lack of duplication of what happened in the Oklahoma game might also have been an indication of just some of the chinks that Ohio State ran in through the course of the season offensively.
Yeah, that very well could be. I know that with Barrett being the quarterback, he wasn't he's not necessarily one of those nationally renowned guys like some of these receivers have had. I can see Noah Brown being that very much being a weapon that could be used as like a possession receiver in the NFL. Again, he's got that big body. He seemed to be able to find the open zones, especially in like in short passing situations, to be able to get just ahead of that first down marker. Again, he's not a burner. He's he ran a 4.57 40. But has enough speed to be able to use his body to catch the ball and to put himself in a pretty good situation. It'll be interesting to see how he can translate his game to the NFL with maybe a higher caliber quarterback, a more consistent quarterback thrown to him.
Well, and I think when you talk about J.T. Barrett in relation to Noah Brown, I think you saw some of the things that occurred with the offensive line at times, maybe having some issues. There may have been some disconnect with some of the offensive play calling at times. So it was kind of a combination of things. But the encouraging thing I would say about Noah Brown is really you're looking at a guy that's had just one season as kind of a key receiver in Ohio State's offense. His previous year he played, again, very much as a role player and a special teams player. So, there's still a lot of untapped potential with this young man who, really dazzled everybody in one game.
Yeah. I'm very much interested in seeing where both Curtis and Noah go. I know Curtis has been highly touted and ranked as one of the top. Again, that looks like everyone's going to try to convert him to a wide receiver. He's ranked right now as I want to say like the top 5 in a top 5 on like CBS. And then Noah Brown, while he's a little bit lower down, I think he could be an excellent project wide receiver, maybe get in on special teams a little bit to start his career, and really see how he could burst out from there and see if he can really find a good spot for him in the NFL. So again, this has been our discussion with Paul Keels, the voice of Ohio State Buckeyes. And Paul, I want to thank you again so much for giving us a little bit of your time to talk about Curtis and Noah, and to give us a little bit of insight on these players and how they've been in college and how they may do in the NFL.
My pleasure. I'm glad to do it.
All right. Well, I'm sure that Ohio State won't have any problems kicking out more players in the next few years. Maybe we can do this again next year.
All right. Sounds good. Take care, Ryan.
All right. Thank you so much, and have a nice day.
You too. Bye-bye.
Hey, Skull King Nation. Thank you for listening to the Skull King Football Podcast. Did you like this episode? If so, be sure to go to iTunes, Stitcher, Google Play, and YouTube to subscribe. Also, please leave us a rating and reviews to let us know how we can better help you rule your leagues.